فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. The religion of Allah, Islam, it is the natural disposition He has created humankind upon. So what are you doing? Of bowing to Allah, wearing the hijab, hijabating, and veiling yourself, your beauty, that is the natural disposition upon which Allah created humankind upon. It's only the Muslim women who are standing against that waves of misguidance. So I don't know, what are you going to hold upon? The waves is flowing against you. You are in the society, the whole workplace is flowing against her. She is going through a lot. Our sister sitting here, she is going through a lot. You are going through a lot, still in the stage of being harnessed to be in the workplace. And that struggle is going to continue until we are laid in our graves. Continue to cover, so that the day you be sent to the grave will not be the first time you are covering, or you have been covered. Because surely, anyone that refuses to be covered will be covered when sent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the waves facing all of us. In the midst of water, what are you going to hold upon? The water is carrying everything away. What are you going to hold upon? What is going to be your strength? What are you going to hold upon? Your iman. That iman should come from the book of Allah. And you make yourself as a creation of Allah, ready to follow His commandments. And be ready to go through anything at all, and all challenges. But you make sure you follow the ways of Allah. You please only Allah and not the world. La asim al-yawm. The Prophet was talking about this era. He says, there are two people that will come. I have not seen them. اثنين من أهل النار لم أرهما. 1445 years ago, our dear Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned that there are two categories of the people of hell I have not seen, but they will come. They will come. Two categories of people. He has not seen them because of what? Why was the Prophet saying that he didn't see those categories of the people of hell? I said, this is not a lecture. I'm going to make it like some kind of, I want to make it interactive. I will ask questions, and there are financial awards. I'm going to make sure the discussion we have today is, initially, when I heard when I saw the flyer, I thought I'll be coming to discuss how to go through the psychological trauma, especially when the venue is at the trauma college. The psychological trauma that we go through, or sisters go through, when they wear the hijab. But when I come to see the situation, and that this is a launch of the hijab, I think it should be about arming ourselves with a spiritual armament that will propel us to a stage where wearing the hijab will be viewed as following the commandment of Allah and not a lifestyle. Commandment of Allah and not a fashion design. So that at that stage, whatever challenge that is facing us, we might have armed ourselves with the necessary iman and the spiritual faith and armament that will be able to penetrate through that waves of misguidance, waves of abnormalities that is flowing against faith in this era. So we look at hijab from historical perspectives. We even go to look at hijab from the biblical perspectives. And we look at what point in history has even the Christians abandoned the hijab. And then we come to look at the Quranic evidences and the wisdom behind the hijab. So why was the Prophet saying that he didn't see those people at this time? Because of what? Because those two categories were non-existent. He says there are two categories of the people of hell. I have not seen them. Because they were not there in his era. Right? Number one, he said there will be men holding canes and they will be whipping people in the markets, in the society to take their monies. This is happening in Islamic history. At a point in time, the police, there was so much political corruption that the police, they will go cane people and take their properties. And the second category, he said there are women, kasiyat, ariyat. Look at the definition, the description. He said, kasiyat, ariyat. They were dressed but naked. They are dressed and yet they are what? Naked. And ma'ilat. And that their hair has turned towards one side. The hair has turned towards one side like the hump of a camel. The way it is turned towards one side. So that's how their hairstyle will be. When you wear turned towards, they add additional hair to their hairs. And the Holy Prophet ﷺ says that these categories, he says, they will never enter the Jannah, paradise. Paradise is forbidden for them, even though the fragrance of paradise will be smelt a distance of 5 miles, 500 miles away. And yet they will not enter paradise. So when a Muslim sister, you are approaching difficulties in wearing the hijab, you need to tell yourself that I refuse to fall into this particular category of women. Tell yourself this. I refuse to fall into this category of women. No matter how the challenge is, no matter how the difficulties is, you need to be firm. And when you are sincere, Allah makes it easier for you. Sincerity can move mountains. But if you're not sincere and you're not convinced, you're just a halfway being defeated by any force at all that tries to prevent you from your hijab. So number one, you're not sincere, you're not firm, you're not even convinced yourself. But if you are convinced and you look at the issue of hijab as life and death, surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will pave the way for you. Respected sisters, historically, hijab has been part and parcel of human culture. The first woman to wear hijab was who? You don't want the financial benefits. And I have awards here. Who is the first woman to wear hijab? Who is the first woman? Who? Hawa was the first woman to wear hijab. Our mother, the mother of all humankind. Hawa. So the first person, the first woman to wear the hijab is Hawa, the wife of Adam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Taha, verse number 121, Allah says that فَأَكَلَا مِنْهَا فَبَدَتْ لَهُمَا سَوْآتُهُمَا وَطَفِقَا يَخْصِفَانِ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنْ وَرَقِ الْجَنَّةِ فَطَفِقَا يَخْصِفَانِ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنْ وَرَقِ الْجَنَّةِ. Allah says that فَأَكَلَا مِنْهَا, both of them ate from the forbidden tree. In Islam, the woman is not the source of evil. In Christianity, they will tell you that Eve ate from the forbidden tree and she was the source of evil, then she convinced the man to eat from that tree. No, in Islam put the blame of eating that forbidden tree on Adam. وَعَصَى آدَمُ رَبَّهُ فَغَوَى. The blame is on Adam. He was the husband and he was the vicegerent of Allah in Jannah and also the vicegerent of Allah on earth. He was the one that is supposed to make sure his family obey the commandments of Allah. So in Islam, there's nothing like there was a snake that gave the forbidden tree to Hawa. She ate it and also convinced the husband to eat it. And when the husband was about to eat it, the angels held the throat and that became the Adam's apple in the throats of men. And the woman was punished by menstruation and childbirth. That was an attempt in Christendom to bedeviled the woman as a source of evil. And in fact, at a point in time, it was being debated whether even the woman is a human being or not, making exception of only Maryam. But today, they have turned all over and then try to put the blame, try to some kind of stereotype, a negative stereotyping of Islam, that women has been relegated to an oblivion. The women has been relegated in Islam because the way the hijab, they have been forced to wear the hijab. When we are to pray, they pray behind men. And so it's as if Islam has relegated women to the back, and the women are not allowed to education. Islam is a religion of backward intelligentsia. These are all negative stereotyping about Islam. None of it is true. And this is a time for us to project our deen and also to project the hijab as a symbol of freedom. You are the real free people. The rest, they have been subjugated with Western mentality, such that they have become callous, and they have become instruments that are used to create some kind of amusement and lust in the society. And that's why even they want to advertise a phone like this. They need a picture of a naked woman behind it. And if they're advertising a newly constructed or a newly manufactured car, there's a woman that will have to advertise it. Meaning the woman is just used as an instrument of advertisement. Once when we come back to Islam, we respect them, we respect our women, they are highly revered, and there are 3 times, we award them kindness 3 times to that of the man. And the one who proclaimed this was none other than the Prophet himself, who was a man and a husband. When a man came to him, he said, "Who among humankind deserves my kindness?" He said, "Your mother." "Then who else?" He said, "Then your mother." "Who else?" He said, "Then your mother." "Who else?" After the 4th one, he said, "Then your father." So we are not enemies. They have created a tension between Muslim men and Muslim women, as if we relegate them. You are at our heart. You are dear to us. That is why Muslim men, throughout history and through the time of the golden age of Islam, an army, a full army, could be prepared just to support a single Muslim woman. During the time of the Khulafa Rashidin, the Khulafa of Abbasiyya, a Muslim woman in Rome was disrespected and taken as a captive by a Roman soldier. And she stood in the market and called out the Muslim Khalifa at the time, the Muslim Caliph at the time. He said, "Ya Gawtha, Ya Mu'tasima, Ya Gawtha," calling the Muslim leader at the time, Mu'tasim Billah. And do you know what happened? Who has an idea what happened during that time? So you don't want any award from me. SubhanAllah. Who has an idea? Al-Mu'tasim Billah, he prepared an army to support this Muslim woman who sought his help. He prepared an army. The first of the army, the first of the soldiers, when the army, they move out, like soldiers today, they are in some kind of, they march. The first one followed by the second one in that order. The first soldier was in Rome, and the last soldier was still in Baghdad. If you know your worth in the heart of Muslim men, and you know your worth in the Quran, you will never and ever joke with yourself. If you know your worth as a Muslim woman, you may just be biologically as any other woman outside. But the faith that you have ascribed to, the hijab that you're wearing, has given you such honor in the heart of Muslim men, in the heart of Islamic institutions, and it has given you that great honor in the estimation of Islam in such a way that pleasing our mothers, they say Jannah is under the feet of our mothers. Jannah under the feet of the mothers. And you see great Muslims, leaders, before going to work every day, some of them goes down with their suit and kiss the feet of their mothers before proceeding to the office. But if you don't know your worth, sometimes you may throw yourself away to be fed on by scavengers without knowing, because you don't know your worth. So historically, the hijab has been part of all human beings, cutting across ages, societies. It is a historical thing that cut across all religions. But the beautiful aspect is that it is only Muslims today who are the only living, practicing group of people who still practice the teachings of all prophets. All the rest have given up. All the rest have given up. The Jews gave up intentionally. The Christians gave up ignorantly. It is only the Muslims left. And do you know what happened in Christendom? In Vatican, in the 19th century, you will never find anywhere a Christian lady going to church with a veil. Nowhere. Even before Islam, the Arab women used to veil. But their veil, we'll come to talk about it when we start looking at the Quranic evidences about veil. They used to cover their hairs. But the hijab in Islam is a step ahead of theirs. No woman goes to the church with a veil. You read the book of Corinthians, chapter 11, verse 3. It says that if a woman prophesies before God with her hair uncovered, then shave the hair. It's a dishonor to herself. To go before God, their Lord, to prophesy, that is to pray without covering your hair. That it is as though it's better for her to cover to shave her hair. It is more violent even in the Bible than the Quran. That hair has no inner honor. To stand before God with your hair uncovered. So if the Christians want to practice this, every Sunday they'll bring scissors, stand by the church, and be shaving the women coming inside to the church without their hair being covered. All of their hair is supposed to be shaved according to the Bible. The Bible says any woman that will go to the church without her hair being covered, the hair should be shaven. Read the book of Corinthians. And in Vatican, they have issued out journals and articles reminding Christian women the need for them to veil. And there are now some kind of campaigns going on in Europe, in many parts of Europe, still preaching. If you go to the internet, you see this. Still following up, advocating veiling of Christian women. So it has been part and parcel of all teachings of prophets that the women they veil when they want to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in Islam, all aspects of our life is worship. So historically, the veiling is part and parcel of human life. And Hawa was the first woman to veil. In that verse we're talking about, Allah said, فَأَكَلَ مِنْهَا. Both of them ate from the tree. فَبَدَتْ لَهُمَا سَوْآتُهُمَا. So when they ate from that tree, what happened was that Allah gave them a clothing that is more in resemblance to what we have today, like the fingers. Like we have our fingers here. You see? Then it covers their body. They were not having physical clothes that we have, but there was some kind of a spiritual cloth that was veiling them and covering them. When they ate the tree and disobeyed Allah, فَبَدَتْ لَهُمَا سَوْآتُهُمَا. They found that their private parts were exposed. فَطَفِقَا يَخْصِفَانِ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنْ وَرَقِ الْجَنَّةِ. Allah says that طَفِقَا يعني بدأ. They started covering themselves with leaves of trees in Jannah. They start plucking the leaves of trees and covering themselves. If it was normal for a woman or for people to go naked, they wouldn't have seen the need. But anybody in his natural or her natural disposition will find it very necessary, very humane to cover the body in the private parts. So Adam and the wife, Hawa, she was the first woman to veil in this world. And she is the one we're supposed to take as our role model. We come back to Islam. Islam came in a society, the Arabian society, and they were having a culture already. The culture of Arabs at the time was that they wear the veil. They cover their hair as well. Women who are not slaves, there's no way they will leave their hair uncovered. It's the slave girls who are serving their masters who sometimes leave their hair uncovered. Even among this category of women, it is very difficult for them to do that. But their veiling system, I didn't bring my veil. I always used to wear this Saudi veil, and when I was coming, I forgot of it in the house. I wanted to demonstrate to you. They wear the veil and leaving it behind. So their necks are exposed. These are setting the parameters for what actually veiling is in Islam. Some women today, the same thing they do, probably because you're in the program, if you're outside, some people they just put a headscarf and the hair is exposed and the chest, everywhere is exposed. That's how women in Jahiliyyah used to wear. They cover it. They wear the veil, leaving the hair like this, and then they leave it behind. Their necks and their bosoms are all exposed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, He reminded Muslim women to start wearing the veil. And that was in the 4th or 5th year after migration of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in which year was the hijab legislated in Islam? I just mentioned it. Which year? I don't know whether you are paying attention. Which year was the hijab legislated? I just mentioned it right now. Do you feel shy to answer questions? Huh? Subhanallah. Why you not paying attention? I said which year? Anybody can answer. Even if you are an invited guest. I said which year? In the 5th year of Hijrah. In the 5th year of what? The 5th year of what? Do you know Hijrah? تعرفون معنى الهجرة? Do you know Hijrah? What is Hijrah? My sister Hafsa, I think your ladies are not with me today. Nobody wants to answer a question. Where is she? Hafsa. What is Hijrah? Yes. From Riyadh to Medina. Migration of who? Muhammad. Takbir. Takbir. Hijrah is what? The migration of the Muslims, the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet what? Muhammad. Always mention the Prophet Muhammad. Allah himself never called him Muhammad. He called him my Prophet. So the Prophet Muhammad from Medina, from Mecca to Medina. This is called Hijrah. This is called what? Hijrah. During whose reign have they taken the Hijrah as the Islamic calendar? During whose era has the Hijrah been taken as a focal point from which the Islamic calendar is calculated? And for this, anybody that answer this question, will take him to Umrah next year. No, they have you. This is the laugh. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I know others are googling. Whose era? It was taken during the time of Umar bin Khattab, during the end of who? Umar bin what? Bin Khattab. So we knew now, we've gotten the information about when the hijab was legislated in Islam. It was in the 4th or 5th Hijrah that the verse came. And what was the verse? The first verse was Surah An-Nur, verse 31. Surah An-Nur, verse what? You need to get this. Once you want to wear the hijab, you need to be armed with its proofs and evidences. There was a time, somewhere 2009, I was watching an interview by 𝐇𝐀𝐅𝐈𝐙. She was interviewing one sister from Fomwag, and then another lawyer, Muslim lawyer called Nafisa. Not a Nafisa here, but one Nafisa was a legal practitioner. And 𝐇𝐀𝐅𝐈� invited both of them to talk about the hijab in Islam. That also led so much controversy in Ghana at the time. They were talking about the hijab. And this Muslim lawyer says that Nafisa, she said the hijab is anti-Islam. It's not in Islam. There's nowhere in the Quran has Allah said the women should wear the hijab. And the Muslim woman who came to represent the pro-hijab, the pro-hit, she said she knows the hijab is a symbol of purity, it's an identity, like many of you would like to say, the hijab is my identity as a Muslim woman, and the hijab is a symbol of purity and modesty. But what is the proof? Are you able to defend it? Are you able to talk about it? Are you able to convince somebody? Many Muslim sisters don't know. Many of them can quote for you a verse or a hadith Let's talk about that. At the fingertips, you need to have it at the fingertips without recourse to even the Quran. Have it. Surah An-Nur, verse what? 31. Surah An-Nur, verse what? Repeat it 3 times. Surah An-Nur. Are you done? Are you done? Surah An-Nur, verse 31. The chapter of light is a chapter of women. Umar bin Khattab, he encouraged women to learn and read Surah An-Nur because it was this surah, this particular chapter, that came to exonerate Aisha, the mother of the believers, when she was during the story of the ifk, when there was a false news that spread that she had a marital conjugation outside marriage with somebody else. The popular story, I'm sure many of you know this particular story. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed 10 verses in الَّذِينَ جَاءُوا بِالْإِفْكِ أُصْبَةٌ مِّنْكُمْ. 10 verses, full page, exonerating her from that particular allegations. That is called Surah An-Nur. So the Prophet said women should read it. This surah came to defend women, and it came to confer an honor on women that was not before. So in this particular surah, in verse 31, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave a very detailed commandment to women. Allah started by talking about وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Like our last but second speaker reciter recited it. May Allah bless her so much and bless the first reciter as well. He said, كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. I want you to count this. كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. We are all being given obligation, men and women. The Quran came to give all of us equal obligations. So spiritually, men are not better than women, and women are not better than men. Spiritually. It is biologically our activities are diverse. Our responsibilities differ. Someone may be the manager under somebody. But that is just administrative roles, and that does not reflect on who is better than the other. You need to get it to one. This is one of the misconceptions about Islam. That men, in Islam, men are better than women, women are not equal to men. We are all equal spiritually. It is when it comes to assigning roles, Allah has given us tougher roles and has made us one way or the other administrators over women. But that doesn't mean spiritually you are better. The Prophet mentioned that one pious woman can be better than 1,000 men who are not pious. One pious woman is better than 1,000 men who are not pious. So a woman could be better than a man, and a man could be better than a woman in the sight of Allah. But our activities are diverse. We have different roles. We have tougher roles, administrative roles to play, and that is not a reflection of who is better than the other. May Allah give us understanding. In Surah An-Nur, Allah started with men. So, كُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. Tell believing men to lower their gaze from looking at haram, to lower their gaze. وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. And to preserve their private parts. ذَلِكَ أَزْكَى لَهُمْ. That is more pure to them. That is more what? Pure to them. Lower your gaze. You don't have to cast your gaze anyhow. Whatever we see is stored in our brain. Stored in your brains. And when it's stored in your brains, it reflects in the heart. And the heart is what pumps the blood. So if you have seen a lot of filthy images, these are stored in your brains. And whenever the brain relaxes, the brain keeps to shoot out these messages that have been seen throughout the day. And when the messages keep shooting up, the heart reacts by taking a position. And the position of the heart circulates through the blood. And the blood gives messages to the necessary part of the body that is supposed to act upon that particular message. So if it is a message of sorrow, then before you realize you are feeling very remorse and sorrowful. And if you have to cry, then you see some people cry. If it is a message that has to do with the opposite sex, it sends the messages, the blasts are pumped to the private parts, and before you realize, the private parts start acting and you cannot sleep. And once you cannot sleep, what happened to a young man? You're not married, you have watched a lot of dirty things. What happened to you? That is a step towards fornication. May Allah save all of us. That is why the Quran started by saying, يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ. It is connected. If you don't protect the eyes, you cannot protect and preserve the private parts. Forget about it. If you want to live a pure life, clean your brains. Clean your brains of filthy images and videos and watching the opposite sex. There's no way. Your faith cannot withstand that when it is released. So the best way is al-ghadd al-basar, protecting your eyes, lower your gaze. And that is why all the two verses, both the verse talking about men, the first commandment is يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, ghadd al-basar, وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. If you don't do the first one, you cannot be sure of the second one. That is preservation of the private part. The men, we have two obligations here. Preserve the eyes, protect the private part, and that is purer for you. It came to the sisters. Allah says, وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ. This verse, I hope that all of you will memorize this verse and its meaning. The next time we are meeting, inshallah, you should all be able to recite it in this class. وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ, go and memorize it in the house. You see, here we equal with men. Tell believing women to lower their gaze, the same as men, and to protect their private parts, the same as men. But the women, Allah added them more responsibilities. وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. And they should not make apparent their beauty. They should not open up their beauty. They should not release their beauty except what is apparent thereof. Why has the woman been charged to restrain her beauty? Because there are two people involved here. We have the men who are the seekers. All the time they are the seekers. And we have the women who are the sought after. We have the talib and matlub. The talib are the men. They say, lower your gaze. You lower your gaze. And preserve your private part. And the sought after to lower your gaze. Don't also see men. The women also don't see men. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, once upon a time, was with his wife. It was his wife, Aisha, and then Salama and Maymuna. Then Maktoum, where his intellect is covered. So he doesn't even know whatever he's doing about. So Allah said, فَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمْرِهِنْ. And Allah used the same word khamar to describe the veil. And the veil is called khimar, from khamar. It means something that covers. Something that covers the woman. So Allah said, فَلْيَضْرِبْنَ. That khamar, that khumurhin, that khimar, that veil, it should be let loose to cover their faces and to cover their necks. There are so many proofs from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that shows that even women used to cover their faces. Aisha radiallahu anha says that when this particular verse was revealed, the women of Ansar, he said, these are the best women I have come across. Why? Because they always hasten to follow the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when this verse was revealed, say they tore portions of their dresses down. They tore portions of their garments. And the فَخَمَّرْنَ بِهِنَّ. They tore portions of their dresses and then they covered their faces and their necks with it. Immediately the verse was revealed, they hastened to implement it. But we are now in a state where we've been Muslim for so many years and we are now convincing each other to appreciate the hijab. And you can start it from today. The hijab, if you wore it for the sake of Allah, you are going to feel the symptoms of freedom and liberation from today. You have been liberated from shaitan and you have been liberated from the society where you have to live up to the standard or up to the request of the society. Why will you punish yourself? I see so many women being punished when I'm in a car driving to work. I see women, even in their car, still applying makeups in the car. Their main aim is how to live up to the dictation of men's commendations at work. You look this, you look that, and they continue their whole life pleasing this man until the day they meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are you going to get from the men you'll be pleasing throughout your life? What are you going to do? Are they going to be with you in the grave? But if you start wearing the hijab, you will never care about pleasing anybody except your Lord. You go to work, what you are going there to do is to contribute with your brains to the progress of the work, and not to contribute your beauty to the commendation of your colleagues' staffs. If you start to wear the hijab, you will feel symptoms of respect, especially when you implement the spiritual aspect of the hijab. Hijab has two aspects. The physical aspect is just the normal wearing. Alhamdulillah, body is physically covered. It's part of your covering. If you pray with your feet exposed, your salah is not accepted. Many of you don't know this, right? That if a woman prays with her feet exposed, she don't have salah. All the four schools of thought mention this. So be very careful about your prayers. Your feet is not part. The aura of a woman in salah is her face and hands. The feet is not part. The feet is part of aura. If you pray and your feet is uncovered, your prayer is not accepted. So you wear a veil, a dress that will let loose when you have to pray, and try to live up to that even outside. This is a very surprising thing. I've been telling people about it. It's very scary. The first time I came across my son, never paid attention to it. The only thing we know is the face and the hands, but we never care about our feet. It's part of your aura in salah. If it is exposed, the prayer is not answered. May Allah give us understanding. Inshallah, I'll bring my proposition to an end. I said it's not going to be a lecture. I wanted it to be some kind of an advice to my younger sisters, and that try your best to live up to that great obligation. You look at the hijab as a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a lifestyle. It's not a dress that you feel like wearing. You see, Allah commanded you to pray. The same Allah commanded to wear the hijab. So our first verse on hijab, Surah An-Nur, verse number 31. The second verse on the hijab, Surah Al-Ahzab, verse number 59. Ahzab, verse number 59. Repeat it 10 times. Ahzab. Repeat it. Loudly. Please do it sincerely. Ahzab, verse number 59. In that verse, Allah told the Prophet, وَقُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ. Allah commanded the Prophet ﷺ that he should tell the believing, he should tell his wife and his daughters and the women of believers. The women of what? Believers. يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ قُلْ لِأَزْوَاجِكَ. Oh Prophet, tell your wives, وَبَنَاتِكَ, and your daughters, وَنِسَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and the women of believers, the wives, daughters, sisters, aunties, grandmothers of believers. Tell all of them, يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ. They use their jalbab, is this type of dress. A jalbab is a long dress, a long wide dress that has an opening here. That has an opening. They should let it loose from their head downwards. يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ. Allah went further to talk about the hikmah behind this, the wisdom behind this. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَا أَنْ يُعْرَفْنَا فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. That is more closer for them to be identified as believing women, and they will never be molested. It is more closer to be identified as what? Believing women. When they see you, any respectable man will respect a sister who is veiled and properly dressed. And if you want to be respected, the best way to live among your colleague men, because of education and work, is for you to give them a distance, a respectable distance, not out of arrogance. You may be very polite, as the sister mentioned, very polite, very intelligent. You use polite words. You can be free with them, but you make sure you have red lines. Nobody touches you. Nobody disrespects you with his words or insult you, play with you, touch any part of your body. But that will depend on your actions, the way you relate with men. And also the best way for men to live with women is the same thing. You respect the sisters, you speak politely to them, you don't touch them, because if you touch a woman, she will hit you back. Women are such that whatever you give them, they multiply it for you. If you want to enjoy staying with your wife, respect her. She will respect you back. Any sister at all you come across, just respect her, she will respect you. If you disrespect her, she will multiply it for you. The women, they receive and multiply it for you and give it back to you. If you make her a queen, she'll make you a king. If you make her a respected brother, sister, she'll make you a respected brother. And that's how they are. So that is how we're supposed to live among ourselves on campuses. You can study with people in a class, but you study at a distance. There's that respect, and there's that kind of way you are launching today. Start the journey of the spiritual hijab as well. One last thing I want to advise myself and all of us is, do not be deceived that the veil can prevent you from achieving any excellence in your particular field, in your various fields. The hijab will never prevent you. Have it in mind. Muslims, they were the pioneers of science and inventions, technological inventions in the golden age of Islam, from the 18th to the 15th century. It was the Muslim civilization that served as the conveyance that transported Greek philosophy to Western civilization. Without the Muslim civilization, there wouldn't be Western civilization. And so when you see a lot of history and a lot of discussions, especially international relations, they are talking about the Western Renaissance, as if it just jumped from Greek philosophy and Greek civilization to Western. That vacuum, anything that happened there, that was the vacuum filled by the Islamic civilization, but they won't tell you that. The Muslims were the pioneers in inventions. Read about that. I had a lecture in Winneba here, the campus, about the Muslim civilization and its contribution to the world. You see a Muslim woman like Fatima al-Fihri. You know the first person to establish a university or a school for learning, an educational system for learning, was a Muslim woman called Fatima al-Fihri. Called what? In the city of Kairawan. In the city of what? In Fez, in Morocco. Fatima al-Fihri. She used her estate, her inheritance she inherited from the father, and established a central mosque and created a madrasa in it, a institution. According to the Guinness World Record and according to UNESCO, that is the oldest university in the world, the University of Kairawan. This is something that is documented, and do not be deceived that Islam relegates women to the background. Women have been the pioneers. They have never been left out in any field, in education, in science, even in battles and military operations. Women have not been left behind. So do not accept that. The first person to establish a school, today that school is hosting working. Who is a founder? A Muslim woman, Fatima. There are a lot of things we should. One of the unique tools that you can defeat, excel academically, and when they see your results, they'll know that this is a great product, this is a great brain, wouldn't like to lose her. When they see you're hard working, like the sister mentioned, you come early,